Welcome to the New York State Department of Health Clinical Education Initiative's Building Blocks for Trans and Gender Diverse Care series. My name is Erica Bostic, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm an adolescent medicine physician and faculty for the CEI Sexual Health Center of Excellence.
And I'm Kai. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I'm a clinical educator for CEI. We created this easy-to-access series on transgender health to serve as just-in-time education for busy healthcare professionals like you. We're here to give you the most important ideas and information to help you take care of your gender-diverse patients and be a better ally to your colleagues, friends, family, and students.
So let's start at the very beginning. We've all heard the terms sex and gender. Are they the same? Are they different? Does it even matter?
Great questions. The answers are no, yes, and kind of. Let's talk about sex.
Not that kind of sex. Get your head out of the gutter. Just kidding. We're all about sex positivity here at CEI.
Right. We are talking about biological sex. Now, what does that mean? That's a surprisingly hard question to answer. Because when people say biological sex, maybe they're talking about chromosomes. Chromosomes are individual packets containing all of your genetic material. They're like folders containing all of the instruction manuals for your cells. And they tell your cells what to do and when to do it. Two chromosomes get all the attention, X and Y. These are known as our sex chromosomes because these chromosomes contain sex-specific genes. So for example, the Y chromosome contains the genes that encode sperm production. And we think we know that there are basically two types of humans, those that have XX chromosomes and then some who have XY. But it's actually not that simple. The vast majority of people do have either XX or XY, but some people only have one sex chromosome. Some people have three. So we really can't think about our genetic code as binary code. It's a lot more complicated than that.
And sometimes when people say biological sex, they are really talking about hormones. You know, hormones, the things in our body that makes us cry into our ice cream or go into a blind rage over a parking spot, or you know, that sex positivity thing. Most of the time, they are actually doing pretty mundane things like telling our bones to grow or keeping our thermostat set at a comfortable body temperature. They can do all of these things because it's not all up to estrogen and testosterone, even though those two get all the attention. When people say biological sex and think hormones, they tend to imagine that people either have all testosterone or all estrogen, but it's actually way more complicated than that.
Right, because in actuality, people make estrogen and testosterone, not just one or the other. And even when one does predominate, it doesn't mean that that hormone will have a greater impact on the body. After all, hormones are signals, and in order for a signal to achieve success, it has to be received. And so if someone's receptors aren't working, then that hormone's messages just won't get through.
And sometimes when people say biological sex, they are just talking about body parts. Body parts are ours from birth. We don't get any say in the matter. And body parts are like snowflakes. No two are alike. This is also true for genitalia. We tend to think of genitalia as existing at one or the other end of a spectrum. In reality, like a lot of concepts we'll discuss, there's a great deal of variety in between.
And finally, sometimes when people say biological sex, they're actually talking about secondary sex characteristics, like the presence or absence of facial hair, or the growth or lack of growth of breast tissue. But just ask any middle schooler and they'll tell you that not all puberties are created equal.
So really, when we say biological sex, we might be referring to chromosomes or hormones or body parts or puberty or some combination of all of them.
Instead of going through each of these different possible meanings of biological sex for each individual person, a common approach is to use the term sex assigned at birth as a stand-in for our best estimation of what this biological bundle means for a person.
Great. So then, Kai, what's gender?
Well, that's even more complicated. Don't worry. Gender may seem complicated at first, but it's actually a lot of fun. As RuPaul famously said, "We're all born naked and the rest is drag." What did Ru mean by that? Well, Gender is up to all of us to define for ourselves. It's how we feel about ourselves. When you wake up in the morning, do you feel like a man? Do you feel like a woman? Do you feel like neither of those but something else? It's up to you to decide. And only you can know for yourself who you are and how you identify in terms of your gender.
So far, what Kai has said about gender is all about how a person feels. But what about the clothes someone wears, or the haircut they get, or the way they walk? That's called gender expression. It may or may not be indicative of a person's true gender identity.
But Erica, I've been told that gender is a social construct. What does that mean?
No worries, Kai. It just means that humans invented the idea of gender so that we can all define gender for ourselves and share it with the world.
Ah, well, I guess that's not so scary.
All right, so we just covered biological sex, what it is and what it isn't, sex assigned at birth, gender, gender expression, the fact that gender, and when you think about it, sex, is a social construct. Next up, we'll cover the ABCs of LGBTQIA+, and how to,
And how not to.
use language in a respectful way. Join us for our next video.